Crop rotation in conservation agriculture. What is crop rotation? Crop rotation is a practice of growing a series of dissimilar different crops or types of crops in the same area in sequential pattern. Here you will see here different crops from different families having different nature of growth patterns and rooting patterns are rotated in the same parcel of land or different plots of land as a rotation. Root crops, fruit crops, leaf crops and legumes are rotated in this way. The legume crops suitable for different localities and different situations can be selected from this list in the same way. Root crops from this list can be selected. Fruit crops in this list can be selected, and then leaf crops in this list can be selected. This is a typical crop rotation. Now let's look at different principles of crop rotation. In crop rotations, non-leguminous crops should be followed by leguminous crops such as maize followed by green gram. Restorative crops should follow exhaustive or not restorative crops such as sesame followed by pulses. Non-leaf shedding crops should follow leaf shedding crops such as rice or wheat should be followed by pulses or cotton. Gain crops should be followed by green manuring crops. Maize followed by cowpea is an example. Highly fertilized crops or crops need higher fertilizer should be followed by less fertilizer requiring crops or non-fertilized crops. For an example, maize followed by black gram. Long duration crops should be followed by short duration or restorative crops. Sugarcane is a long duration crop, should be followed by groundnut or cowpea or green gram like short duration crops which are also restorative the land. Ratoon crops should be followed by again restorative crops. Sugarcane, pigeon pea like ratoon crops should be followed by cowpea or green gram like restorative crops. Deep-rooted crops such as cotton or castor or sometimes pigeon pea should be followed by shallow-rooted crops like potato, lentil or green gram. Deep tillage crops such as potato, radish or sugarcane should be followed by zero or minimum tillage crops like pulses or green manuring crops. Dicot crops should be followed by monocots or monocot crops should be followed by dicot crops. crop rotation. Specific principles are there to control pest and disease. Controlling pest and disease is one of the topmost expectation of crop rotations in the conservation agriculture. Let's see one by one. Anaerobic cultivation should be followed by aerobic cultivation. For an example, rice can be followed by pulses or oil seeds, basically to reduce the weeds of wetlands. Crops which are susceptible to soil pathogens should be followed by tolerant or trap crops for soil pathogens. Example, sugarcane can be followed by marigold, basically to control nematodes. Crops with problematic weeds should be replaced by cleaning crops. Wheat or rice like crops are infested with problematic weeds. Therefore, after these crops, wine crops which are having kind of a smothering growth habit should be adopted in order to control these problematic weeds. Now let's look at how the crop rotation is practiced in conservation agriculture. Conservation agriculture is an approach to managing agroecosystems for improved and sustained productivity, increased profits and food security while preserving and enhancing resource base and the environment. In the conservation agriculture, crop rotation becomes even more important. In monoculture, residues of previous crops get accumulated on the soil surface unless otherwise they are burned. These residues can have a negative effect on crop productivity, principally by favoring an increase in the pests and diseases and from possible allelopathic effects from the preceding crop. This problem can be overcome through conservation agriculture, since crop residues from different crops are left on the soil, left on the land after harvesting of crops. Other than that, crop rotation helps in controlling pests and diseases of the conservation or agricultural grounds. Now let's look at what are the important considerations of crop rotation. Rotation is better than monoculture, even when plants of the same family are cultivated. In general, for the rotation, crops from different families are selected. The most efficient rotations are those that include legumes. Because of the legumes having kind of a restorative ability or the nitrogen fixation ability, legumes are basically included in typical crop rotations. Crop rotation as an isolated practice is generally not enough to maintain a stable productivity for many years. Therefore, in such situations, an addition of some external nutrients is necessary. aspects to take into consideration to establish crop rotations. Now let's look at one by one. Crop rotations should always include green manure or cover crops, we called as GMCCs, prioritizing the production of biomass to improve soil cover and organic matter content. The same species should never be sown on the same field in the following season. In order to control pests and diseases as well as to reduce the degradation of soil and nutrition exhaustion. The green manure or cover crops utilized should be adapted to the region's microclimate, to the soil and to the farmer's production system, and should result in important benefits for cash crops. In order to plan crop rotations, the effects of one crop on the following crop should be taken into consideration. In that case, compatibility with the following crop is very important. Unless otherwise, whole system may collapse, and then ultimate goal of having good yield and soil productivity and environmental quality through the crop rotation might not be there. The degree of resistance to attack by pests and diseases is also again important to consider. There are some crops that we are selecting in the crop rotation may be resistant to kind of pests. Those crops are very much suitable for the crop rotation. Biomass production of various crops is again important. Basically, crop rotations are not involved with burning of crop residues. Instead, the crop residues of the previous crop is left on the soil, allowing them to decompose slowly and then adding humus and nutrition to the soil. In such case, adequate biomass production of various crops is important to be considered. So then, crops should be selected in such a way. The depth of root system and its spreading style is again important. When the roots are growing to different depths, it is very important to absorb nutrients and moisture from the different depth of the soil profile. In that case, when one season is involved with shallow rooted crop, the second season or the consecutive season, farmers can select deep rooted crops so that the nutrients and moisture from the deeper layer of the soil profile could also be utilized very effectively. Nutritional requirements by various crops is again important to be considered. Incorporating nitrogen fixing crop or a legume is very important in this junction. Nitrogen fixing crops enhances nitrogen fertilizer in the soil or nutrition in the soil, and then that can be utilized for the following crops. And at the same time, if one season more exhaustive crops for the different nutrition is utilized, the second season or the preceding season, farmers have to select crops which are not utilizing the same nutrients which were used at the previous season by the previous crop. look at what are the advantages of crop rotations. Many crops may have positive effects on succeeding crops in the rotation, leading to greater production overall. Rotations are used to reduce pests and diseases in the cropping system and to control weeds by including smothering crop species or green manuring crops. Rotations may also give better or benefits in terms of improved soil quality, better distribution of nutrients in the soil profile, and increased biological activity. Through rotations, peak labor times may be reduced and labor better distributed throughout the year, since the planting and harvesting times are different. Crop rotations may decrease the risk created by extreme weather events such as droughts or floods and their effects, as bad seasons or bad parts of the season may affect some crops more than the others. Crop rotations can balance the production of residues by altering crops that produce few and or short-lived residues with crops that produce a lot of durable residues. Crop rotations enhances the resilience of farmers' livelihood by improving the soil properties and improving the potential of higher yields, which is very important. Finally, important things to remember when practicing crop rotations. Crop rotation is the most efficient and economical way to break the biological cycle of pests and diseases, thereby making conservation agriculture feasible. With the utilization of green manuring or cover crops in crop rotation, great achievements have been obtained in the maintenance and increase of agricultural production in several countries, facilitating the diffusion and adoption of conservation agriculture on small, medium and large farms. Thank you.